Well, hello again, and welcome back to another episode of the Summer Spotlight 2020. I am your host, Gayle Nicholson. So glad to see you all back today. While you're out there, if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe, comment, give us some love. Again, also on Facebook, show us some hearts. When you make your comments, please do make comments, but we can't respond to them during the show. We will review comments after the show. If I do get to see them, I will give you a shout out. So make sure that you chat it up out there. Let's get some people talking about all the amazing business owners that we've had on the show. Speaking of amazing business owners, today I want to introduce you to a guy who is he's really quite a bit of a genius when it comes to small business success. So we get to pick his brain today on why companies are thriving sometimes in this pandemic environment and how to keep yours from not being one of them. So let me introduce you to Aaron Montgomery, the small business success coach at OurSuccessGroupcom. Thank you so much for being with me, Aaron. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited, and I appreciate the really nice introduction here. You say genius, and I think mainly because I've had the opportunity to see lots of failures. So that's typically what makes a good genius.
That's really great point. Really great point. You have the experience in seeing what has worked and what hasn't worked. That you can talk to people about, what's going to work for them and what's not. That makes a lot of sense to me. Let me check in. Where are you at right now? What state are you in?
Yeah, I'm in St. Louis, Missouri, and lived here for about 9 years. I'm actually from where you're at, though, in Arizona.
Yeah.
Grew up all around Arizona, but yeah, out here in St. Louis, it's a blustery 90 with lots of humidity. Something you guys are not familiar with, but you know about the heat.
Yeah, I don't know how you managed the transition to all that humidity. I come from Michigan, so yeah, huge humidity up there. And coming down here, it's funny. I got off the plane and I could like feel the moisture getting sucked out of my skin. And now that I've acclimated to this dry heat, oh, it's so hard to breathe in the humidity. Um,
Yeah.
what's the coronavirus threat level, so to speak, there in Missouri? Are you guys completely closed down? Are you limited open with restrictions? What's business like there?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a bit of a mixed bag. So I'm here in St. Louis. I'm actually on the western part of St. Louis, the kind of the suburb area, so to speak.
Hmm.
And actually down in St. Louis County, they call it. It's been a bit more restrictive. They still have some restrictions in place. Out here on the western part of the city, St. Peter's area and St. Charles area, where I'm at, they've actually been a little less restrictive. Most things are back open. There's certainly social distancing. There's no mask requirement at this point. And the numbers have been relatively low. I don't know if what's the factors are there.
Hmm.
Certainly for myself and my family, we've chosen to stay home and try to stay in as much as we can and not
Hmm.
be part of spreading it. But, but we're not afraid or anything like that. So it's just a matter of, I think, kind of going with, I don't know, the biggest thing I've seen is like everybody kind of gets a little up in arms about certain things. And it's like, everybody's got to do their own thing and be their own person. And I think we all just need to kind of understand that. And so here in our area, it's definitely been a little less restrictive. And it is interesting to kind of go to different places and you go, that's not a whole lot of social distancing going on there, but
Yeah.
they seem to do okay. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's good to hear that there's different levels of it around the country, and
yeah,
not all of us are, you know, in areas like New York City where they're literally people stacked on top and top and top of each other for
yeah,
miles around. So it makes sense that it would be more of a threat in those conditions than it might be in one of the flyover states, so to
Yeah.
speak, you know?
So,
So I'm
exactly.
glad that you and your family are handling it fairly well. This has been a big shift for a lot of companies, and pivoting has become important. So
Yeah.
let me ask you, like pre-pandemic,
Yep.
remove the pandemic from all of this, right?
Sure.
Before any of this started, what were you seeing as reasons why a small business specifically, might fail?
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting, and I'll answer your question for sure. Um, but honestly, there's not a whole lot of difference though. But just to kind of go back to what you were saying, I think as a small business, the odds are stacked against you. I mean, that's just the way that it is. It's the reality of it. Depending on what study you are following, they'll say that 85% of all small businesses will fail within their first year. So just the having the guts and gumption to get out there and start a business is a big deal. And people should be applauded just for doing that, because small business is so important to our economy and our society and all of those things. But a lot of times there's typically three themes that I've seen from all my years. Like I said, I've had the opportunity to see lots of small businesses start, fail, and succeed all the way around. And the three themes that kind of stick out to me are, first, theme that kind of happens when people tend to fail is they leave a 9 to 5 type job or whatever, working for somebody else, and then they start their business, and they treat their business like they were doing their 9 to 5 job, where I'm clocking in, I'm just working these hours, it's for the freedom, I'm going to do whatever I want whenever I want. And all those things are true, but you also have earned the right as a small business owner to work every hour of every day if you'd like.
Yeah.
So so that's the first thing. The second thing is they kind of are winging it. There's no plan. Some guru says, oh, just write this 1-page business plan and you're going to be, boom, everything will be great. That's not the case. A 1-page business plan is certainly a fine place to start, but you've got to do some planning. And then I guess this is the biggest one, and this has always been something that I've really I've tried to wrap my head around, for me personally, for all the businesses I get to work with. But the biggest one is they just don't believe in themselves enough. They don't believe in themselves enough to get out there and ask for the order. They don't believe in themselves enough to, ask for help, to just lots of things. They're afraid to make a mistake. They're sitting on their hands more than they're doing anything. So,
Gotcha.
so those are the three main areas that I've seen people really struggle with as small businesses before and even during the pandemic.
Those are some excellent points. I mean, I was just talking to somebody else yesterday on the fact that people tend to go into business for themselves, and they want to do the 4-hour work week immediately, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And it is a whole mindset of, oh, I can do whatever I want now. I'm not chained to someone else's desk. If I want to go and have, a late lunch with 3 martinis, I can do that. Well, yeah, you can. But that's a choice, and there's a list of consequences that come with every choice. And are you willing to put up with the consequences that come with that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I mean, you can take off to go to the kids' school function and do all that. But then guess what? When they go to bed, you've got to make up for those 4 hours that you spent there, and make sure that you're, doing the things that you need to do, making sure your marketing's flowing, you're responding to emails, you're, wearing all those hats that you get to wear as a small business owner now. Mm-hmm. So
awesome.
It is a big deal.
Now, you've told us where new small businesses tend to go wrong. What should they be doing instead, like specifically?
Yeah. And I think if you just kind of go back and look at those 3 areas of failure that, like I said, seem to be the most common theme of all of them, is if you take those things and then you kind of work backwards from there, you're going to actually really be able to overcome a lot of those things. So if we talk about, treating it like the 9 to 5, the 4-hour work week, the 3 martini lunches, all that kind of fun stuff. Well, again, yes, that's the greatest part about having a small business. You get to make those choices now. Those are all your choices. But those choices, like you said, come with some consequences. So you need to look at it more of like a cycle, maybe like a farmer. I think that's one of the best analogies that I've heard from a gentleman named Rory Vaden in one of his books. Talked about the whole process as a cycle, like a farmer, where you've got to, work really hard to plant the crops. You got to tend to them, and then you can harvest. But there's going to be downtime in there, and that's great. But there are going to be times where the whole work-life balance thing, it's going to be right out the window. And it does become a balance over time, but you got to start with some hard work. You got to start with really kind of digging in, getting the things planted, pushing through some difficult challenges by putting in a lot of effort up front. It's the other thing to kind of think about it as is like a flywheel. When you first start pushing that flywheel, you're not making much progress, but you're putting in a ton of effort. But if you're doing this right, as you get going, that will continue to be easier to push, yet you'll get more momentum and going. So look at it more as a cycle than the typical 9-to-5 job. The second thing was the planning aspect of it. We talked about, okay, you got to do a 1-page business plan or something like that. Totally agree that that's a great place to start, to just kind of understand what it is that you're after. Because at the end of the day, we're creating a business as a small business owner. So we're creating something, and everything that we create has to be created in our minds first. And so the way to go about that is to have a certain amount of your time devoted to working on your business, not in your business. So what happens is people will start a business, they'll go out there, they'll get a customer, they've got in a lot of the people I work with are t-shirt decorators. So they've got to, make the shirts. They've got to, send the invoice. They got to do all this stuff. And that's the working in the business part. What they don't do is stop long enough to step back from it and go, okay, what's my next move? What happens when a pandemic comes? Am I going to be ready for it? What are people going to be doing? Do I have enough connections with support around me to be able to weather a storm? Those kinds of things. So getting into the real nuts and bolts of actually planning, working on a business plan for your business would be the other thing that you got to really do. Yeah. And then the third thing is mentioned, not believing in yourself. And here's the deal. At the end of the day, I think deep down, each and every single one of us knows in our heart of hearts what it takes to be successful. We can go read books. There's all sorts of resources with the internet, shows like this. There's all sorts of great information about what it takes to be successful, but it's the actual act of doing it. It's the putting those things into action. It's the seeing something and having an idea, and then having that willingness to go out there and try that idea, even though you might fail. One of the best quotes that I try to live my life on is from a gentleman named Jack Canfield, where a lot of you might know him as one of the co-authors of Chicken Soup for the Soul. Mm-hmm. And he says that fear just stands for a fantasized experience appearing real. So the fear of failure is just that. It's just made up in our heads. So we have to believe in ourselves. And one of the best ways that I've seen and that has worked for me is surrounding myself with like-minded people that are interested in abundance, and people that are interested in growing each other, and the whole mentality of a rising tide lifts all boats. So within those three things, I think you've got plenty to kind of, if you can focus on those things, work in cycles, make sure you're spending enough time on planning and understanding what the future might look like for your business. And then just believing in yourself, getting out there, taking action, surrounding yourself with good people. So those would be my biggest tips, Gayle.
Awesome stuff. I want to not pick apart, but I want to focus for a second on what you said about surrounding yourself with like-minded people. Like 5 sentences just wanted to come out of my mouth at the same time. Here's the thing, and you know this as well as I do, and I just want to remind our audience of this. If you look at the 5 people that are closest to you and they aren't closer to where you want to be than you are pulling yourself down. Go find people that are 2 steps ahead of you on the path that you're on. because they can reach back and pull you up, and you can reach their hand. They're close enough, you can make that leap in that gap between where you're at now and where they're at now. And they're going to do the same thing, and they're just going to keep pushing you up as you come along. And then there will be others behind you that will be looking to you for the same exact thing. I cannot stress enough what Aaron just said. Surround yourself with the people who are already on the path going where you want to be.
Yeah. And I think your point about, the fact that you're reaching ahead, that's a great way to look at it. And I think the other part that you mentioned is you also have to be willing to reach back and pull somebody else up. Because what I've seen is you get a lot of people that want to they want to reach forward, but they're not willing to give back, and typically what happens is that they run out of resources because they've taken for so long. What I've found, in fact, a great guy that a friend of mine here in St. Louis told me this one time when I was talking to him about, what I could do for him, how I could help him because he was helping me. And he said to me, you can't outgive the universe. And that really stuck with me because it meant that if I'm giving to people behind me, that they're going to also help push me forward and make it easier for me to reach forward, like you were saying. So I think that's a really great point that you make there.
Thank you. Now, what keys really do you find most important to success? What are the really top ones? Because there's a whole toolbox full of keys that we got to try and locks all over the place as an entrepreneur. So which ones are the top? I don't know, how many can you give me? 3, 5?
I could, like you said, I could give you lots. We'll start with just a handful here, maybe 5 or so, because I think the biggest thing that this would be my number one thing that people should really focus on, especially as they're starting or they want to grow their business, or maybe they've been struggling and they want to kind of get out of that rut, is, and some people that aren't into the numbers as much as I am might be a little bit like, but here's the deal. It's really important. You have to understand your numbers. You have to understand what it is that you need in your business to be able to be successful. So, if you're out there and you're selling something that costs you $10 and you're selling it for $5, you'll never make up for that in volume. But if you don't know how much it costs you to be part of that business, then you're going to always struggle, because you got to start from a place of understanding, okay, do I either need to reduce my costs or do I need to be able to increase my prices? And both of those are levers that business owners need to be able to pull. But if I don't know where those levers start at, then I'm never going to give myself a chance for success. So that's the first thing, is just be, I'm not saying you have to be like a total data hipster like me, where you've got every single number of everything kind of written down, but you have to at least have a pretty good understanding of what your expenses are versus what you need to make and what you are making, and how you go from there. So,
and I would interject is with that, just to kind of boost it up a bit, is that we need to be aware of like you alluded to it, the real expense of being in this line of work, whatever it may be, because it's not just, okay, I'm buying a widget for $3, I'm going to sell it for $5 and make $2 profit. Okay. But then you've got the overhead of all of these other things that go into it, whether you've got to outsource video production or, photo editing, or get some professionally done shots. There's all of these little details that go into you being able to stand as business, right? Correct. And if you don't take those expenses into account, your $2 markup on a widget's not going to carry the day.
Correct. That's a perfect way to, like I said, I work a lot with t-shirt folks, people that are decorating t-shirts and things like that. And, we call it what does it cost you per hour to have your business open? So like you said, those other expenses, your rent, and because if you're not factoring in that stuff and you do want to grow, then how are you going to be able to, maybe you're working from home, but maybe someday you need to have a storefront or whatever the case may be. Maybe someday you need to invest in a better website. Well, if you've not factored in that part to start, you'll never be able to make enough sales to catch up to that if you haven't already, like you said, factored in those overall costs of doing business each and every day.
Absolutely. What's the next one?
So the next one is using that information, taking that information, and then understanding the pricing. Most people want to go out and price it this way. They want to go out and search for their competitors and say, okay, my competitor's selling it for $20, so I'm going to sell mine for $19.99. And that's just not the way to. So you have to understand pricing. You have to understand what your customers value, what your potential customers are going to value, what you value. So if you're just trying to be the cheapest game in town, there's always going to be somebody willing to be a penny cheaper than you. And that cycle will continue on until one of you cries uncle. Mm-hmm. So that's the second key is getting a handle on pricing. Again, you don't have to nail these things. You don't have to be an expert at it. You have to think about it. You have to plan for it. You have to look into it a little bit more than just saying, okay, I think I should sell this for this. And then wonder why you're failing, kind of thing. So that's the second key, Gayle.
Awesome. Fabulous. Now, in the process of businesses heading towards their goals, I find for myself, I've got kind of a shiny object syndrome, right?
You and me both, yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh, I want to take this challenge, and I got to, and it's like, they're all useful and they're all helpful. But, how do you, as a business person, choose what is fun to explore and what is essential for my business to grow?
Yeah. Well, that's actually a perfect lead into the third key I was thinking about, which is this whole idea we talked about earlier of the business planning. And a big part of business planning is really kind of spending enough time understanding why you're doing this, why you started your business, what's important about it. It's not just about making money. The making money part is great, and that's hopefully a byproduct. But why are you wanting to make money? Are you wanting to make money to be able to support your family? You need the freedom. Is it because you want to make a difference in people's lives? It can be a lot of things. Some people start a business because they want to change the world. Some people start a business because they want to change their world, their family. So understanding why you're doing something has got to be the first thing in that whole process that you talked about. Like, how do I know what to do? Because what I've found is that once you can get clear on that why and kind of what your goals are, then all those decisions about all of those, like you said, shiny objects that come floating across our screen from all the great marketing people out there that are marketing to us, mm-hmm. All of those shiny objects can be put against one single question. Does this fit my why? Will this get me closer to my why, to my goal? And if it will, then go for it. If it won't, then it's probably something to pass on and maybe wait until things change, or maybe you'll never go back to that. But I think if you do the planning, if you really kind of try to understand why you're in business and what it is that your customers feel is important and all of those things and what your goals are, mm-hmm. then you measure those shiny objects against your goal, and it's a lot easier to kind of go yes and no, as opposed to, I don't know what's going to happen here, what's not going to happen here. So that's the way I look at it.
That's excellent. I love that. I really do. And I want to piggyback on that why. If you have not already figured out your why, don't be ashamed if your why is selfish.
Correct.
Right? Like, I've gone to business development groups and stuff, and sure. And you hear people announcing their why, and it's all very touchy-feely, and it's all very, I'm going to save the world, right? Yeah. And it made it difficult for me to acknowledge that my why is I like to sit in the front row at a Barry Manilow concert.
Yep, absolutely.
That's my why. So I've got to have all of my chores done. Good Cinderella syndrome believer that I am. Got to have all my chores done, all my bills paid before I can go have my reward. So that, I mean, I don't care
Yeah.
if you agree with it. It's my why.
Yep.
And
Totally.
I just encourage everybody to embrace your why, whatever it is. You don't have to tell anybody what it is. It's
Sure.
for you to motivate yourself.
Yeah. And I think that that's a really important point because yes, your why doesn't have to be to change the world. In fact, most people's is not, and yet they're still very successful. They're still very uh, influential and important members of society or whatever. Because like your example is perfect. You have a why because of something that's internal to you that might come across as quote unquote selfish, but it's not because that's what makes you happy. And when you're happy, you're out there spreading that happiness, which is spreading to other people. It doesn't have to be change the world. That's why what I tried to mention in there was change your own world, change
Yes.
what's going on inside of your world. Like I said, let's be front row at that concert as opposed to in the cheap seats. And
Right.
and that's a perfect why, just like everybody else's why. So um, I agree with you 100%. And even though you don't have to share it with everybody, the more people you share it with or put it out there, the more people will try to help you, even if you feel like it's a selfish why.
Absolutely, you're absolutely correct. And some of these groups that are on Facebook now, there's a lot of them. There's a lot
Yes.
of them. All right, varying levels of value. Trust me.
Very much so. Yeah.
But I think we both belong to the Success Engineers group, right? Rob Garcia.
I'm in way too many groups, so I may or may not be.
Okay. Well, if you aren't, I'll check later and invite you if you're not. If you're
Please
not,
do.
because he's got some great value out there. But again, those are really good, safe spaces for you to acknowledge or to share your why. Among people that get that your why doesn't have to be, you know, saving the planet,
Sure. Yeah.
right?
Exactly. And like
Go
I
ahead.
said, regardless of what your why is, though, you're still if it's making you, if it's fulfilling you, it's putting you in a place where you're at your peak happiness,
Mm-hmm.
then it's helping the world. I mean, there's just no two ways around it. I mean, look at the world around us. If everybody was in that space of we were happy and fulfilled in our own selves, uh, by ourselves, by our own responsibility, we would be in a better place. So I would say that, everybody's why is as important as changing the world because it is changing the world.
That brings up a really interesting point and an interesting thought in my head. Have you ever noticed how when you go directly for something like happiness,
Yeah.
you can never catch it, right?
Correct.
But when you go for doing something that is fulfilling, right? Happiness is a byproduct.
Correct.
Similarly, when you go out there in business, I'm not going to do a sales message that says, hey, I'm due for another first row ticket. Why don't you buy my product?
Correct.
You can't go directly at it. The money coming is a byproduct of you fulfilling your purpose, serving
Correct.
others, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Excellent.
think that's, and I think one of the reasons why that happens is because we all do have very individual and specific whys that, serve different purposes, that have different goals. And so that's why we have to figure out how we fit those things together. Like you said, you're not going to go out there and say, buy my product because I need another first class ticket, but
Right.
you're fulfilling their needs.
Mhm.
And that's what a business person's really doing is figuring out how to fulfill their needs, how to get the people that they serve closer to their why.
Mhm.
And in turn, that helps you get closer to your why. And
Yeah.
it's a pretty cool cycle if you do it right.
It really is. It really is. Now, can you give our audience one thing today that's going to leave dividends for them?
Yeah, I mean, we've already talked about it a little bit. In fact, you brought up the fact that surrounding yourself with the five people that you surround yourself with. But I think probably the most important thing a small business person can do is to somehow, some way, build yourself a network. If you go back and read like a book like Think and Grow Rich from Napoleon Hill back in the 20s all the way up into other success principle type books, they all talk about having a mastermind group, having a group of people around you that, you know, you can be honest with, that there's that trust level with, that you realize that you're going to be able to pull yourself up when you've been knocked down, and, you know, you can support them and do all that other stuff. So I think the biggest thing people can do is somehow, some way. And the cool part is today's world, it doesn't have to be, in fact, a lot of places, it can't be face-to-face. It can be a online experience. It can be, you know, there's all sorts of different ways. Just find yourself a community. It could be a Facebook group, like you mentioned. Find yourself a community of people that are like-minded, not because I want you to just be narrowly focused, but I want you to be surrounded with people that are looking for success, because that will help you. Now, you can go out and do the other things and open your mind to new ideas. That's totally fine. But I think the number one thing for people to do is just go surround yourself with like-minded businesses, people that are going to, you know, be challenged with the same things you were challenged with, as well as be able to say, you know what, you've got it. You can do this. You're going to do this. We're going to do it together. So that's, you know, in a big way, that's why we created our Success Group, was to build that community. So.
Excellent. Excellent. Yes. You have dropped so much value in just this 30 minutes. I can't even imagine what you deliver through OurSuccessGroupcom. You want to tell us a little bit about all of it?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you so much for that. I've been blessed, like I said, to be around a lot of businesses that have done a lot of good things. And I've also seen lots of failures and been parts of lots of failures. Heck, I've made more mistakes than I can count. At a certain point, it was, let's see, about this time last year, I met up with a friend of mine who's a garment decorator. And we had just looked at it and kind of said, you know, why do people struggle as much as they do? You know, there's information out there and it's just coming from way too many different places. So we kind of got together and we said, okay, well, what's important to us? And we actually solidified our why. In fact, I posted up, we talk about it all the time. And our why is to provide resources that empower over 1,000 businesses to achieve their idea of success. And I've had people question me about it. Well, why only 1,000? I'm like, well, that's where we want to start. We'll regroup as we get beyond that. But if we can help 1,000 businesses, we're going to feel successful. And so we built this group called Our Success Group, and it's lots of different things. It's business training. It's a support group. We've got a Facebook group and other things like that. My favorite thing is actually a thing we put together called Success Tracker. Let's see how this does on the green screen. But we actually have people tell us what their goals are. And then we send them a certificate. We send them a little round to it, meaning, you know, put this in your pocket so you remember to take action. We have a whole list of here's how to achieve your goals. And then we announce it to the group. We all work together. We all go, oh, well, have you tried this? Oh, okay. Well, you're doing great. Keep it up. Good job. It's so cool. It's so cool to get to see people achieve success. I think that's what the big box check for me is I love watching those moments of just, oh my God, I made it. I reached for this goal I didn't think I could make, and I made it. And for me, I love kind of, like you said, that selfish bit for me is that little check mark I get in my heart that says I was a little bit part of that.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, it's called Success Tracker.
And don't be bashful about that, because you know what? We are all human beings. The bottom line is that we don't do anything that does not serve ourselves.
Correct.
Right? The fact that it does serve other people is a happy byproduct, but
Correct.
There's nothing to be ashamed of. Your why is your personal. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah.
There's no wrong why. Well,
correct.
There's some wrong whys, but
I think you got to be
those are usually revealed in a villain's monologue. Those.
Totally, yeah. Fortunately, that's few and far between. So.
Awesome. All right, my dear. So now you're offering something special to the people who have watched with us today. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the success tracker that I mentioned, that's the way that we want to get people involved with our group to see if it's something that is worthwhile for you. So we do have a discount going. It's already really inexpensive. It's only $20 to get involved. And with that $20, like you said, you get the stuff that I showed you just right out of the gate. And then you set a milestone, which is kind of, a lot of times for a lot of people, it's kind of the halfway point. And once you get to that milestone, we send you out some swag. It's a coffee mug that, you get to show off, I did it. I reached my milestone. And then once you reach your goal, you're going to get a t-shirt. And really, though, the big part of this is you're getting that, we all have those days where you kind of go, man, this day sucks. I'm not going to get there. I'm struggling today. And what I found is that if I've told people what I'm shooting for, when I have those days, normally towards the end of that day or maybe the next day, somebody that I told about my goal pops in and says, hey, how's it going? I'm sure you're doing awesome. And you go, you know what? I'd be letting them down if I stop right now too. So that's what it's all about. We've got $5 off of that just to kind of, again, get you in the door. So it's
fantastic. So
it's cool.
The link to get that Success Tracker program with the $5 off discount will be in the description of this video. So please go in the description, find it, click on it, and join. Aaron, I want to thank you so much for a delightful conversation and being with me today and all of the gold that you dropped for my audience. Thank you so very much. Do you have any final thoughts for our viewers today?
Yeah. My real final thought is really just to thank you. It was a great conversation. We talked about finding like-minded people, and the first time you and I got to chat, I felt like I'd found somebody that, was very like-minded. So appreciate everything that you're doing and appreciate your help getting people through the pandemic and now to the sunny side of things, right?
Absolutely. Thank you so very much. All right, Facebook, have a fantastic day today, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Bye. When you open yourself up to work, progresses. That recovery is possible. You do not have to live as a victim until your last days. You have unbelievable strength, and I know that because you're still here. Do you want to create something completely unrecognizable with your life? I can show you how.